Welcome back to Echoed Stories. Get comfortable, it's story time, let's dive in.
I bought the house on Cedar Ridge for the silence, not for the war. It was a foreclosure. A mid-century ranch that had seen better days, sitting on 4 acres of wooded land at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was a steal. The previous owners had neglected the house for a decade. There was mold in the bathroom, the roof was leaking, and the hardwood floors were stained with God knows what. But the land was perfect. Ancient oaks, a small creek winding through the back, and privacy, or so I thought. My neighbor to the north was a man named Richard. Richard was the self-appointed mayor of the street. He was 60, retired from some middle management job where he probably yelled at people for a living. And he treated his lawn like a putting green at Augusta National. The first day I moved in, I was unloading boxes from my truck, sweating, tired, just wanting a cold beer. I saw him walking over. He didn't have a pie. He didn't have a welcome card. He had a clipboard. "You're the new owner?" he asked. He didn't offer a hand. He just looked at my rusty pickup truck with disdain. "Yeah," I said. "Name's Mike." "Richard," he said. "We have standards here, Mike. The previous owners, they were trash. I expect better." He tapped the clipboard. "I've drafted a list of neighborhood guidelines. We don't have an HOA, but we have an understanding. Keep your grass under 2 inches. No commercial vehicles parked overnight. And for God's sake, do something about those shutters. The paint is peeling." I blinked. I had owned the house for exactly 4 hours. "I'll get to it when I get to it, Richard," I said. "Right now, I'm trying to make sure the toilet flushes." He sniffed, turned on his heel, and walked away. That was the beginning. For 6 months. It was a Cold War. I renovated the interior, tearing out drywall, fixing plumbing, working until midnight every night. Richard watched me. He would stand at the edge of his property, hands on his hips, just watching every time I mowed my lawn. He would come out with a ruler afterwards to check the height. If a single dandelion blew from my yard to his, I got a text message. "Weed control is a responsibility, Mike, not a suggestion." I ignored him. I kept my head down. I'm a patient man, but everyone has a breaking point. Mine was my dog. Buster. Buster is a rescue. A German Shepherd mix. Big, goofy, wouldn't hurt a fly, but he looked scary. One Saturday, I let Buster out in the backyard. I was installing a new back door. Suddenly, I heard yelling. I ran out. Richard was standing at the edge of his manicured hedges, spraying Buster with a garden hose. My dog was cowering, whining, soaking wet. "Get this beast away from my property line," Richard screamed. "He's barking at my wife." Buster wasn't barking, he was wagging his tail. "Don't you ever spray my dog again," I said. My voice was low, but I was shaking. "If you have a problem, you come to me." "Then build a fence," Richard yelled. "Keep your trash animals on your side." "Fine," I said. "I will." And that's when the real trouble started. I called a fence company on Monday. I wanted a 6-foot privacy fence, solid wood, specifically to block my view of Richard's face. The contractor came out to give me a quote. We walked the property line. "Standard procedure," the contractor said. "We follow the hedge line. That looks like the boundary." I looked at the hedges. They were thick, perfectly trimmed, running in a straight line for about 200 feet. Beyond them was Richard's backyard oasis. He had a custom-built stone fire pit, a massive pergola with expensive climbing vines, koi pond, and a detached garage extension he had built last year to house his vintage Corvette. Something felt off. I'm an engineer by trade. I look at details. I had looked at the county GIS maps online when I bought the place. They are rough, not legally binding. But the map showed my property line flaring out towards the back. The hedges went straight. "Hold off on the quote," I told the contractor. "I need to get a survey." I didn't hire the cheap guy. I hired Old Man Miller. He's been surveying this county for 40 years. He costs double what anyone else charges, but his word is gospel in court. Miller spent 2 days out there. He had to dig. He used a metal detector to find the original iron pins from the 1955 subdivision plat. They were buried 3 feet deep, under layers of mulch and soil that Richard had added over the years. I was sitting on the porch when Miller finished. He walked up the steps, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and laid a large map on my table. He looked confused. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "Well," Miller said, "that depends on how much you like your neighbor." He pointed to a bright red line on the map, then he pointed to the physical world. The property line wasn't at the hedges. The property line was 22 feet past the hedges. I stared at it. I couldn't process it at first. 22 feet. That wasn't just a strip of grass. Richard's entire oasis was on my land. The koi pond, mine, the stone fire pit, mine, the expensive pergola, mine, and the garage, the corner of his new detached garage, the one housing his precious Corvette, crossed the line by exactly 3 feet and 4 inches. I felt a strange mix of horror and absolute pure delight. I didn't go over there screaming. I played it cool. I went to a lawyer, a real shark named Saul. We drafted a letter, certified mail, return receipt requested. The letter was polite. It stated that a recent survey had revealed an encroachment. It included a copy of Miller's map. It offered Richard a solution. I would sell him the strip of land for fair market value, plus the cost of the survey, plus my legal fees. It would have cost him maybe $25,000, a lot of money, but cheaper than moving a building. Richard received the letter on a Tuesday. I know because I heard the scream. He pounded on my door 5 minutes later. I opened it, coffee in hand. "You trying to blackmail me?" He shouted. He was purple. Veins were bulging in his neck. "This is fraud. You moved the pins. I saw that old man digging. The pins are where they've been since 1955, Richard," I said calmly. "I have rights," he spat. "Adverse possession. I've maintained that land for 20 years. I planted those hedges. It's mine by law. I'll sue you into the ground." "Read the letter, Richard," I said. "I'm offering you a way out." "I'll see you in court," he said, and he slammed the door of his white SUV so hard I thought the window would crack. He sued me. He actually sued me. He filed a quiet title action, claiming the land was his via adverse possession because he had openly used it for the statutory period. It was stressful. I won't lie. Lawyers are expensive. The retainer alone wiped out my renovation budget. I spent nights awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was going to lose my house because of a strip of grass. Richard was smug. He would stand by his fire pit, my fire pit, drinking wine and laughing loudly with his friends, knowing I could hear him. But Richard made a fatal mistake. Arrogance makes you sloppy in our state to claim adverse possession. The requirements are strict. You have to prove open, notorious, exclusive, and hostile use for 20 years. But there's a kicker. You also have to prove you acted in good faith. My lawyer, Saul, started digging through public records. He went back 10 years. He pulled everything, building permits, tax assessments, variances, and then he found the smoking gun. 5 years ago, Richard had fought his property tax assessment. The county had assessed his property value based on the full acreage. Richard had filed a formal appeal. We found the transcript of the hearing. In the transcript, clear as day, Richard argued to the tax board that his usable land was smaller than the county map showed because of a drainage easement and swampy area on the north side, and that he did not utilize that land. He explicitly stated, on public record, under oath, that he did not consider that 22-foot strip part of his valuable property, just to save about $400 a year in taxes. He denied ownership to save a few bucks. Now he was claiming ownership to keep the garage. You can't have it both ways. We walked into the mediation room. Richard was there with his expensive lawyer. He looked confident. Saul didn't say a word. He just slid the transcript across the table. "Page 4, Saul said. Paragraph 2. Richard's lawyer read it. He stopped. He read it again. He closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. He whispered something to Richard. Richard turned pale. "But that was just for taxes," he stammered. "It's a sworn statement," Saul said. "Judicial estoppel. You can't claim you own it here when you swore you didn't own it there. We will file a motion for summary judgment. We will win and you will pay our legal fees." Richard's lawyer looked at us. "Give us a moment." We waited in the hall. 10 minutes later, the lawyer came out. Richard was slumped in his chair, looking like a deflated balloon. "He won't pay the $25,000, the lawyer said. "He says he doesn't have the liquidity." "Then he moves his stuff," I said. He has 30 days. Whatever is left on my land after 30 days becomes my property to dispose of as I see fit. It's in the court order. They signed. The next 30 days were the longest of my life. Richard didn't do anything. He was in denial. He thought I was bluffing. He thought I wouldn't actually destroy a beautiful garden and cut into a building. He kept mowing the grass. He kept parking the Corvette in the garage. Day 29 came. I sent him a text. Tomorrow is the deadline. The crew arrives at 8 a.m. He didn't reply. Day 30, 7:45 a.m. I didn't call a landscaper. I called a demolition crew. I hired a mid-sized excavator and a team with concrete saws. I also called the sheriff's department to stand by, just to keep the peace. The heavy machinery rolled down the street. The ground shook. The sound of the diesel engine idling was the sweetest music I have ever heard. Richard ran out of his house in his bathrobe. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at the excavator. "You can't do this," he screamed. "This is insanity." The sheriff looked at my court order. He looked at the survey stakes. He looked at Richard. "It's a civil order, sir. It's valid. Step back or I'll have to detain you for interfering." I nodded to the foreman. "Clear it up to the line." The excavator roared. The first thing to go was the pergola, one swing of the bucket, and the expensive cedar wood splintered like matchsticks. Then the fire pit. The steel bucket smashed the stone work, grinding it into gravel. Richard was sobbing. He was on his knees on his side of the line, watching his oasis turn into a landfill. Then, the garage. They didn't tear the whole thing down. That would be structural. They used the concrete saw, a massive, screaming diamond-tipped blade, asterisk screech. Asterisk dust filled the air. They cut exactly along the property line. They sliced through the roof shingles, through the trusses, through the drywall, through the concrete slab, the corner of the garage. That 3-foot triangle fell away with a heavy thud. It left the garage open to the elements. You could see his tool bench inside. You could see the poster of a Corvette on the wall. It looked like a dollhouse where a giant had ripped the wall off. "You're a monster," Richard wailed. "I'm a neighbor," I said, "and I'm building a fence." I put the fence up the next week, right on the line, 22 feet closer to his house than he ever thought possible. Richard put his house on the market a month later. It sat for a long time. It's hard to sell a house with a garage that's missing a wall and a backyard that ends abruptly at a wooden fence. He eventually sold it for a loss. The new neighbors are a young couple. They have a baby. They brought me cookies the day they moved in. "We saw the fence," the husband said. "Is that exactly on the line?" I smiled. "Down to the inch," I said. "Down to the inch." Sometimes, when I'm sitting on my back porch, drinking a beer and listening to the wind in the oaks, I look at that fence. It's just wood and nails. But to me, it's a monument to the fact that you shouldn't throw stones or spray dogs when you live in a glass house built on someone else's land.
So that's the story. If you enjoyed the sound of justice and that concrete saw, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps the channel more than you know, and I'm curious. Have you ever had a Richard living next door? Or maybe you're currently dealing with one? Drop your story in the comments. I read them all. And honestly, I think we could all use a few more tips on how to handle bad neighbors. If you want more stories about people getting exactly what they deserve, make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you in the next one.